Habakkuk's dialogue with God is often framed as a poetic lament, an earnest cry for justice amidst overwhelming corruption. But what if the narrative was more than just a plea for divine intervention? What if it was an exposé on the moral contradictions of divine justice and the unsettling partnership between God and imperial powers? Habakkuk begins with raw frustration. Israel is drenched in corruption, the Torah is neglected, and injustice is rampant. His complaint is sharp and unyielding, not just a call for help but a challenge, a day to God to act. But when God finally responds, his solution is startling. Babylon, a brutal empire known for oppression and unchecked violence, is summoned as his instrument of judgment. Could it be that Habakkuk's real struggle isn't just with Israel's sin, but with the nature of God's chosen solution? To call forth a tyrant nation to punish a lesser evil is, by human logic, akin to curing a disease by introducing a stronger virus. This isn't divine wisdom, it's divine contradiction. Habakkuk's second complaint is not mere confusion, it's outrage. If God is truly just, how can he justify using a nation more wicked than the one he condemns? Is this a test of faith, or is it evidence of divine pragmatism at the expense of moral clarity? Habakkuk stations himself as a watchman, waiting not just for an answer, but perhaps for an admission, a crack in the divine plan. God instructs him to write down the vision, promising that justice will come in its appointed time. But there's an undertone here, a flicker of dissent. Writing it down is more than just obedience. It is record-keeping, evidence that the prophet demands accountability. When God describes the 5 woes, the economic oppression, the abuse of power, the forced labor, one must wonder if these are merely observations of Babylon's sins or a critique of divine complicity. After all, God chose Babylon to act on his behalf. Is this judgment, or is it divine endorsement, however temporary, of empire building and oppression? And if Babylon falls, does that exonerate God, or does it expose a willingness to partner with evil until its usefulness is exhausted? When God finally responds to Habakkuk's complaint about Babylon, he delivers what many interpret as a message of hope. The righteous will live by their faith. Yet, in this retelling, one might argue that this isn't just a call for trust. It's a demand for unquestioning loyalty in the face of moral inconsistency. Consider the broader context. Habakkuk has witnessed corruption in Israel and now sees Babylon, a force of terror and destruction, heralded as an instrument of divine justice. To simply live by faith in this scenario is not just faithfulness. It is to surrender to a cosmic chess game where empires rise and fall as divine strategy unfolds, regardless of the human cost. Could it be that Habakkuk's choice to wait and watch is not pure obedience but silent protest? A resignation to the fact that divine plans are beyond questioning, even when they seemingly contradict the very principles of justice they claim to uphold. The prophet watches from his tower, not with hope, but with simmering skepticism, recording God's words with the meticulousness of a scribe archiving evidence for future generations, a ledger of divine decisions that one day may need to be answered for. As God continues, he issues a series of 5 woes against Babylon. Economic exploitation, wealth amassed through unjust practices, violence and bloodshed, building cities with the blood of innocents, slave labor and oppression, treating people as commodities for empire building, irresponsible leadership, drunken leaders celebrating as their cities crumble, idolatry and power worship, trusting in their military and idols instead of justice. The words are powerful and righteous, but under scrutiny, they feel almost self-indicting. If Babylon is guilty of these crimes, what does it say about a God who uses them as his tool? Does divine endorsement sanitize their brutality, or does it merely leverage it for a greater cosmic agenda? Habakkuk, the watchman, hears this proclamation of Babylon's eventual fall, but perhaps he hears something else as well, a rationalization of temporary evil for long-term good. Is this divine pragmatism justified, or is it evidence of moral fluidity, an ends justify the means approach that mirrors the very empires it condemns? In this reimagining, Habakkuk's laments are not merely cries for justice, they are cross-examinations. If Babylon is to be punished for its crimes, who holds God accountable for wielding them like a sword of judgment? Is there a higher court to which Habakkuk appeals? Or is faith simply submission to the inscrutable? Perhaps his role as a watchman is not just to wait, but to witness, to record and remember that divine actions are not beyond critique, even if such critique remains unanswered. Habakkuk recounts the mighty deeds of God, his power over nature, his past acts of deliverance. But in this retelling, his prayer takes on a different tone. It is not just faith. It is forced faith, a surrender to the inevitable rather than a celebration of divine justice. Habakkuk acknowledges God's power, but there is a haunting realization embedded in his words. Power does not always equate to righteousness. His trembling and fear, Habakkuk 3 verse 16, are not just reverence. They are symptoms of a deeper conflict, a struggle to reconcile his own sense of justice with God's methods. Babylon's rise and fall are written into the narrative as inevitabilities, divine strategies in the grand tapestry of history. But to the watchmen on the walls, they are also a revelation of divine complicity with power, a willingness to permit atrocity for the sake of a larger, unseen purpose. Habakkuk ends with a powerful declaration of faith. Though the fig tree does not bud and there are no grapes on the vines, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. This is often read as triumphant faith. But what if it is more akin to resigned faithfulness? A submission to divine will, not because it is fully understood or justified, but because there is simply no other choice. In this reimagined perspective, Habakkuk is less of a celebrant of divine justice and more of a witness to its paradoxes. His watchtower is not just a place of faith, but of silent protest, a monument to unanswered questions, a reminder that divine methods are sometimes as inscrutable as the injustices they claim to correct. The prophet's voice, though subdued in the end, lingers as an unspoken critique. Who watches the watcher? Who holds God accountable when justice seems to compromise with power? Habakkuk's prayer closes the book, but it is not the closing of the conversation. The watchman may step down from his tower, but the questions remain, etched into stone, waiting for answers that may never come.